60 The Answer.
Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. This piece in the most recent edition of Chicago Magazine, Illinois is the most progressive state. That's a feature, not a bug, to Chicago Magazine. And to majority of the state's population, clearly, based on our elected officials.
Electing BLM Brandon.
Illinois has become the most progressive state in the union. Just look at
Yay.
the summer our governor is having. It's bigger than Chicago. Last month, the state Supreme Court ruled the Safety Act constitutional, making Illinois the first state to eliminate cash bail.
Yay.
On Monday, Jelly Belly doubled down, expanding access to abortion, announcing $23 million in grants to clinics experiencing a surge in demand from our neighboring states. Look at the summer our mayor is having, launching a progressive agenda that includes eliminating the sub-minimum wage for tip workers and raising real estate taxes on million-dollar homes.
Yeah, to help pay for home shelters for homeless people, housing for homeless people, because they really want to be housed.
Actually, just look at our mayor. A union organizer ran on a platform of making the rich pay their fair share. Johnson is the most left-wing big city mayor in the United States. He doesn't call himself a socialist, but his city council floor leader, Alderhuman Carlos Ramirez Rosas, does. Sure does. Everything about this is correct. It's just the author, Chicago Magazine, Ed McClellan, of course, is celebrating this. And so how did Illinois become the most progressive state in the country? And by that euphemism I despise, a Marxist state in the country, because that's what it is. Well, you see, Chicago being the financial and cultural capital of the Midwest, and as the author argues, winning in the 21st century global economy at the expense of surrounding states. Is that what's happening? I don't know about that. But we're attracting young college graduates from those conservative small towns in Wisconsin, Indiana, Iowa, and Missouri that want to move to Chicago, not because they want to, go out to bars and restaurants in West Loop, but because they want to be surrounded by Marxist activists. During the mayoral campaign, McClellan writes, the most dedicated BLM Brandon volunteer I met was Jonathan Nagy, a 33-year-old queer artist who moved to Chicago from his hometown in Ohio in 2016, just like Tony Preckwinkle, or just like
Mayor Lightfoot.
Yeah, Lightfoot, yeah. Preckwinkle, Minnesota, right? Yeah. A small town Ohio is not a great place to be queer or an artist. I love the haughty attitude towards small town America. Right? It's like the entire state of Florida. Anybody who doesn't live in Chicago or a big metropolitan area, these are sort of your anti-vax, don't say gay, mouth-breathing.
Trump lovers, yeah.
Yeah, right. They're these bumpkins that don't understand the ways a big city live in.
Kamala Harris said farmers, they don't know how to get driver's license.
Fax machine? They can't use a fax machine.
That's right.
They don't know how to get a fax. They don't know how to use a fax machine. Well, nobody has a fax machine anymore, Miss Vice President. The queer artist settled in Logan Square because he was looking for a political community and wanted intentional spaces to meet my neighbors.
Intentional spaces.
Yeah. Well, and this is why a lot of people are leaving Chicago, is because they want intentional spaces not to meet Jonathan Nagy. It's all good. Oh, I mean, except for economic opportunities, and that's correlated to fiscal policies, but it's also correlated to public safety. there's not much mention of that in this piece, while Mr. McClelland is celebrating Illinois being the first state to eliminate cash bail. Interesting. Sort of glosses over that. For more on this Xanadu that is Chicago and Illinois, according to Chicago Magazine, pleased to be joined by Maury Richards, former chief of the Martinsburg, West Virginia Police Department. He also worked for 24 years as an officer and lieutenant in the Chicago Police Department and holds a doctorate in adult education from NIU. Maury Richards, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Dan. Good morning, Amy. Thank you.
You ever get back to Chicago?
I do. I still have a couple of kids and grandkids and a bunch of good friends I made over the years. So, yeah, I do.
So what's your...
I'm actually, I'm actually living in Columbia, Missouri now. So
one of those.
Nice,
Oh, geez, backwater.
So I'm,
Yeah,
Okay.
it's unsophisticated. You're unenlightened now.
Hick.
Yeah, you used to be
There you
enlightened.
go.
Now you're not enlightened. So give us some perspective then. 24 years on the force here, and then also obviously working in other jurisdictions. What have you seen? How would you characterize what Chicago is today versus maybe when you started on the force? Both as an officer and with what the police department is today, and then what the larger city is.
Sure, Dan. Well, as I'm sure you're well aware, it's like night and day. I came on CPD in 1991, actually after a career in a steel mill on the southeast side of Republic. And what happened in 91 really mirrored what was going on in New York, LA, that there was a tremendous surge in anti-violence, starting, based on, broken windows theory, which really works, going after, quality of life crimes, coordinating that with what's known as ComStat, focusing in using computers and that type of intelligence to go after hotspots, taking out or targeting and putting in prison, very dangerous repeat offenders. And the results were amazing. Between 91, I'd say about, 2008, 2010, homicides were cut in half in Chicago, almost by 80% New York, and these cities became very safe. And, of course, that also connected with the community policing strategy where, officers were working the beat, had a lot of support within the community because they were solving problems. And one of the important things to realize is that the communities who benefited the most were primarily, poor, Black, Hispanic communities, which had the most violence. So
Right, and so let me talk about the quality of life thing, because we talk about murders and shootings for obvious reasons. But just this story, I was having dinner with a buddy of mine yesterday. He's got a Jeep Cherokee Trackhawk. He left it at apparently this is a popular car to steal. I don't know. He left it at the valet at O'Hare. He goes out of town. He comes back. No Trackhawk. Calls police. The valet called police because she knows him. There's a lot of police at O'Hare. Took an hour and 20 minutes for police to show up. And then the officer assigned to his case. He said, I want to go down and ultimately they captured the guy who stole his car. I want to go down and testify against him. He's like, that's a waste of time. The police officer now in the case telling him it's a waste of time. First of all, the guy was out 3 hours after he was arrested, and you're not gonna he's charged with a misdemeanor, even though he's got a rap sheet, charged with a misdemeanor for stealing a car out of the O'Hare Airport. He gets in a chase with police. He damages three other cars, and he totals my friend's car. Still only charged with misdemeanors. Just the backstory, and it's like, don't even bother. And then his daughter's like, don't go down there. He's going to get out, and his friends will be there. And if they don't get you at the courthouse, they'll track you to your home or something. Please leave it alone. You got the insurance money. Just walk away from it. And I understand that perspective, but to me, that whole experience he was describing is the quality of life issue that goes under discussed. We talk about the headline murders and mass shootings, and of course we should, but also just the everyday living in a place where lawlessness has taken hold. And so why would my friend go to Chicago? Why would my friend stay in Chicago? And he's not. He's a Florida resident now. And that's you just hear those stories over and over again, neighborhoods across the city, and that's just treated with a shrug of the shoulders by the powers that be.
Well, you're absolutely right, Dan. Everything that I mentioned, all that progress was totally abandoned. And what we have to realize is this was not incidental. It was not a mistake. What we've seen over the last 15 years in particular, in almost every major Democrat-run city where you have, hard left leadership. You mentioned Marxist. I'd also say it's part of a globalist, political perspective, really pushed by people like George Soros, with the ultimate goal to disintegrate our society, America as a civilization on all levels. And, when you can undermine the rule of law and replace that with chaos, this is what you get. So, all this is intentional. You have, the eliminate cash bail movement, defund the police, demonization of police as, systemically racist, all those lies. And then you add into it the coordinated effort by George Soros, where he now has 80 states attorneys across the country, representing about 75 million population, and their sole purpose is not to put criminals in jail, but to keep them out. And this, in turn, has disastrous effects on police morale. You talked about these officers not showing up. Part of that is because every major department is short hundreds, sometimes thousands of officers. And the ones on the street, they hold back, because there's no support. These district attorneys would rather prosecute the police than a criminal.
But why, Mr. Richards, why does George Soros and these prosecutors, why do they want to release criminals on the streets? Why?
Well, ultimately, because his goal is to destroy Western civilization, United States in particular. And one of the easiest ways to unravel a society is to eliminate that rule of law and replace it with chaos and crime. And that's exactly what's happening. You see it on the southern border. You see it with legalization of drugs. all these things Soros has a major hand in, and he's also, connected with a number of other programs. I recently wrote an article that came out in the City Journal talking about the problems in Baltimore, which are very similar here in Chicago. And what the Biden administration has done, they're putting about $1 billion into these programs called group violence intervention, which basically they want to replace the police with social workers. And it's, based on the premise, and the CDC backs this up, that violence and crime are so-called public health problems. In other words, it's not a decision that someone makes to commit a crime.
It's a virus. Yeah, right. That needs a bunch of federal and state and local money for violence interrupters. We saw that here. BLM Brandon, not your Brandon in Baltimore, Brandon Scott, but Brandon Johnson here, made the big announcement in advance of July 4th weekend about the violence interrupters that are going to be deployed and so on and so forth.
Sure.
And 75 people were shot and 15 people were murdered, and it was just cut the normal state of affairs in Chicago. But the key point too is which you were talking about, their perspective, which I think people have a hard time believing. They always have a hard time ascribing bad motives to other people, but it's not even about bad motives. It's their ideology is more important to them than your country or your city. Their ideology, they will pursue their ideology to its disastrous ends because that is what they're attempting to do. It's all in furtherance of creating heaven on earth. And if there's destruction along the way, well, that's just the bumpy path to a better tomorrow. And that's what they sell. And unfortunately, a majority of the electorate in this city and state are buying it. Maury Richards, he's the former police chief in Martinsburg, West Virginia, also served on Chicago's police department for 24 years. Maury, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
If you're talking about it, Dan and Amy are talking about it. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Did you know that St. John's Lutheran School in Lombard is the only school in the entire state of Illinois offering the renowned Hillsdale College K-8 curriculum? Attention parents in Lombard, Glen Ellen, Wheaton, Downers Grove, and surrounding areas. Are you searching for an exceptional educational experience for your child? Look no further than St. John's Lutheran K-8 School, where academic excellence meets strong Christian values. At St. John's, our partnership with Hillsdale College ensures that your child receives a rigorous K-8 academic experience. What sets St. John's apart is that we recognize the concerns many parents have about the radical woke agenda infiltrating public schools. That's why we're dedicated to providing a nurturing environment that promotes the Christian faith, traditional values, and critical thinking. The Hillsdale College K-8 curriculum, combined with our focus on our Christian faith and character development, will be